Welcome to the CommunicationDiva Podcast, episode 26. Today's podcast focuses on the subject of passive communication styles, which is usually connected to a passive behavioral approach in general. While those who have adopted passive behavioral or communication styles may feel this benefits them, such approaches actually increase the likelihood that one will not be genuinely listened to or taken seriously, and indeed will probably be taken advantage of by others. So listen up, Communication Diva listeners, and learn about a common way some people do not communicate effectively. If you want, no pressure or anything. You don't have to keep listening, really. It's probably not that great a podcast anyway. Sorry.
Welcome back, everyone, to Communication Diva. This is Jenn Swanson, and this is the podcast that is designed to inform you about communication issues, talk to you about skills and techniques and ways in which you can improve your communication, with the hopes that that will improve your relationships and, in turn, improve your lives. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to episode 25 about communication and the abusive person, I encourage you to go back and listen to that one because it seems to have hit a nerve and it's been shared all over the place. It's getting a lot of downloads. And so you might want to go back and take a listen if you haven't yet. And if you do like what you hear, please share it with anyone that you feel could benefit from hearing about signs and symptoms of abusive behavior. It's a really important topic, and again, it's received probably the most downloads so far of any of the Communication Diva episodes. So I'm thrilled that the work of Karen McCandless Davis is being spread about because she's doing amazing work. And I really appreciate all of the people that have come to Communication Diva as a result of that interview. And if you are wanting to know how else to listen to our show, you can do that on iTunes, on Zune, on BlackBerry, and on Stitcher Smart Radio, which is directly on our website at CommunicationDiva.com. There is an app that you can download for free for any of your mobile devices that will allow you to custom create a playlist of podcasts and radio shows that you love to hear every week. And so Stitcher Smart Radio is the way to do that. Now, today I wanted to begin a short series about different behavioral styles: passive, sometimes called non-assertive, aggressive, and assertive behavioral styles. And I would like to just do one each week for the next 3 weeks. And so we'll start that today. Now, everyone has elements of all three in them. And, we all use different styles depending on what situation we're in, who we're with, what the power dynamic is. And so none of them is a bad thing, except that one of them, the assertive style, is probably more optimal and a better behavioral style to default to. If you tend to be defaulting to the aggressive behavioral style, you're going to run into some problems, and we'll talk about those next week. If you tend to default to the passive or non-assertive behavioral style, you also are encountering difficulties with that, I'm sure. And so today we're going to talk about that style, the non-assertive or passive style, and just talk about ways to tell if that's your usual default. Now, sometimes until it's pointed out to you, you might not realize that that is your behavioral style. And sometimes it might explain a few things. And one of the things I'm all about here at Communication Diva is personal growth. I've done an awful lot of it, and I've got a long way to go yet. And I've found that the more I learn about myself, the more I am able to understand why I react certain ways when people communicate with me, and what my triggers are, and also ways to communicate with more difficult styles that people might have if I can understand what my style is. And for years and years, and this is why I'm starting with the passive style, but for years and years, I was a very passive person. And I was living with someone who had a very aggressive behavioral style, and I didn't realize. I thought, I'm self-sufficient, I'm intelligent, I'm educated, and all these things, but I was still exhibiting very passive behavioral style, tendencies, and some of them I just learned about when they were pointed out to me by taking many courses in communication. So, once I recognized them and realized that I was doing that, I was able to work on that a little bit and become more assertive. And so my hope is that if you are terribly shy or find yourself exhibiting any of these passive behavioral styles, that you might be able to pick one or two and just pay attention to how you behave and notice when you're behaving this way. And then maybe you can start to slowly change that to a more assertive style. It takes a bit of courage. Speaking as a formerly very passive person, it takes courage. It takes work. None of this is easy. But it really, really will make you a happier person and make your relationships go a bit better if you are able to recognize and to change some of that passive behavior into more assertive ways of being. So I'm going to start with what it looks like to be passive. And I've listed about 9 major, I call them signs or symptoms, to pay attention to. I'm just going to name them, and then we'll go back and look at each one of them in a bit more detail. There's probably more than 9, but these are 9 that have come up when I teach this subject in my classroom and when I have conversations with other students about this particular style. So let's just go through the 9 signs and symptoms, and then we'll go back and take a look at them in more depth. So number 1, you are known as the nice one. That's number 1. You're a nice person. Number 2, you say yes a lot, if not always. You say yes. Number 3 is you apologize a lot for all sorts of things. Number 4, you fail to stand up for yourself. Number 5, you have trouble making decisions. It's really hard to make a decision. Number 6, you're very humble. Don't like to talk about yourself. Don't like to share very much. You also, number 7, avoid conflict at all costs. Right? It's much easier if you don't make anybody mad or you don't argue with anybody. You just agree with everybody all the time. That's number 7. Number 8, you put everyone else's needs before your own. So everyone else's needs come first. And number 9, you use tentative or passive language. So those are the 9 things. And I will have these all listed on the website at CommunicationDiva.com. So if you've forgotten the list, you can go back and look. But let's begin with number 1, you being known as the nice person. And I'm just saying you in case I'm speaking directly to somebody out there who is feeling this way. This may not be you, but it might be somebody that you know, somebody that you care about, somebody that you live with. And even recognizing it in someone else can be helpful. So, number 1, you're known as the nice one, which means you actually say things you don't mean or don't want to because you want to be nice. You want to appear to be friendly and nice. Maybe you don't want to stand out in the crowd. Maybe you're really, really shy, so you just nod and agree with things. And the downfall of this is that you don't really have your own opinion, or you probably do have your own opinion, but you're not sharing it with anybody else, so other people don't think you have an opinion, and you're not saying what you really think or feel. So you may get taken advantage of, because if you're not willing to say wait a minute, and appear to be somewhat not nice in your eyes, then people are going to just do what they're going to do and take advantage. Somebody who behaves this way, if this is you, you might spend a lot of time talking to yourself afterwards about what you should have said or what you could have said or what you should have done. And being so nice sometimes means that your true personality, any spunk or spark that you might have in your personality, is covered up. It's masked. It's hidden. And your individuality disappears if you're always the one being agreeable and agreeing with everything everyone else says or does. So this can really fester inside. And I use the word festering a lot because I did it for many years. And festering is so unhealthy physically, mentally, emotionally. If you are sweet and kind on the outside, but you really are not saying what you really think and what you really feel to anybody on the, you will go home and you will fuss about it and you'll relive it in your mind and you'll talk and mutter and, I should have said this, I could have said this. Where does all that frustration go, right? And sometimes I really think it does come out in physical symptoms, in illness, and can be really dangerous to your body and your well-being. So being known as the nice one definitely comes with a price and a cost. Number 2 is you say yes a lot. And this kind of comes right on the heels of being the nice person. And you say yes a lot, particularly when you really want to say no. Can you work your day off, Jen? Can you babysit on Saturday? Can you give me a ride home, etc.? No one else wants to chair this committee. Will you do it? There are all sorts of problems with saying yes when you really don't want to do something. It's an exercise in frustration making. Again, you'll fuss and grumble as you do whatever it is you said yes to and don't really want to do. Now, I know for myself that I really don't, I love to cook at home and I love to cook for other people, but I don't love making coffee for everybody and working in the kitchen after church. That's just not something I love doing. I'd rather be out meeting the people and talking and doing other kinds of work, pastoral care and listening to people and all of that. But I really am not the person who has the gift of that kind of hospitality. When I'm in my own home, I adore cooking meals for other people and playing in the kitchen and doing that kind of thing. But making coffee for 50 people, I don't do it that well. And I'm really not good at that. So I usually will not say yes to that. Even, if there's no one else to do it, I will try my best to find someone else for whom this is a gift. You'll look like a really nice, helpful person if you say yes a lot, or so you might think. But here's a little secret for you. People have more respect for those who have their own opinions, for those who set their own boundaries, and for people who say no when they need to say no. So saying yes all the time definitely does not guarantee that you will be respected by other people. In fact, sometimes, which is odd, but sometimes it's exactly the opposite. If you say yes all of the time, people will begin again to take advantage. So it might seem like you're being helpful and lovely, but it will come back to bite you often. So that's number 2. Number 3 is you apologize a lot. And you apologize when there is nothing really for you to apologize for. Now, I know that we Canadians get teased a lot for apologizing. It's kind of a stereotype, I think, and I've actually seen jokes about it in movies. And then I think, how many times have I apologized when someone else bumps into me or steps in my way on the sidewalk and I'm the one who says, "Oh, I'm sorry." Probably dozens of times. It just kind of seems natural to apologize, or maybe it seems polite or something. But it really is a sign of a passive trait. Now, I'm not saying that you should never apologize. There is a definite time for a true and real apology. But if this is ringing true for you at all, if you find yourself apologizing for all sorts of reasons that really don't need any apologizing for, pay attention to that. Pay attention to how many times a day you say, I'm sorry, and to whom you say, I'm sorry, and you might be surprised. It may just be something that is become a habit in your vocabulary, but it is very passive behavior. So apologizing all over the place when you don't need to is a trait of being a passive person. So that's number 3. Number 4 is you fail to stand up for yourself. If you're unjustly criticized or you're accused of something, or if someone is telling a story about you that isn't accurate, you may not say anything. You might bite your lip. You might be avoiding conflict at all costs. And what will happen later is you'll go home and you'll steam about it in private. There's that festering again. Sometimes a person who doesn't stand up for themselves is called a doormat. You may have heard of this before. She's a doormat or he's a doormat, because other people are able to walk all over you. And this is not a good thing. Again, you'll be taken advantage of if you fail to stand up for yourself and say, wait a minute, what you just said isn't fair, or I didn't say it that way, or I didn't do X, Y, or Z, or whatever you need to stand up for yourself about. If it is not addressed, if someone is rude to you or someone is unfair to you and you don't stand up for yourself, guaranteed you're going to fuss about it. You're going to fester about it. And you won't be able to let it go, probably for years, if it's not actually addressed. So that is a big one, failing to stand up for yourself, number 4. Number 5, you have trouble making decisions. Decision making would require putting forth an opinion, and your opinion might differ from that of another person, causing potential conflict. So people who are passive tend to have real trouble making decisions. And sometimes it's simple decisions as, what to have for dinner. Oh, I don't know. What would you like for dinner? Oh, I don't know. What would you like for dinner? I mean, you could go on like that forever. But it's much easier sometimes, at least up front, to let other people make all the decisions. And then you can complain about them later and fuss about them later. So indecision can often lead to things like paralysis, inertia, stagnation, and non-growth, not moving forward, because you have trouble deciding what to do next. So indecision and trouble making decisions, or very, very long periods of time before decisions are made, can actually be signs and symptoms of passive behavior. Another one, number 6, is you are very humble. Okay, so humility is an excellent thing as long as it's real. But if you're forever saying to people things like, oh, I could never do that, I'm no good at that, but you're amazing, I wish I could be as amazing as you are, then you're not really being humble. You're actually being really annoying. Putting yourself down all the time while praising other people is not going to earn any respect. And I'm not suggesting that you tell the world how brilliant you are all the time either, because we have enough people in this world that do that on a regular basis. But if you're good at something, then there's nothing wrong with sharing that or stating that fact on occasion. But nobody likes to hear a person talking constantly about how bad they are at something. It almost feels like attention-seeking behavior, and I get really frustrated by it and tend to walk away from people who do that regularly. I knew somebody that did this all the time. It would be, oh, you're so smart, you can do all this and you can do all that, and I'm terrible, I can't do anything. And it was passive, but it was annoying. I don't know if you know people like this, or if you find yourself doing this all the time. I mean, sure, there are things that I can't do, and I am perfectly willing to admit them. I was somewhere the other day, and a woman had knit the most amazing prayer shawl, actually, and I looked at it and I said, that is fantastic. I said, I don't have this gift. I admire people that do have this gift. It's a beautiful shawl, well done kind of thing. But, I don't spend all sorts of time saying, oh, I can't do that. I'm not talented. It's this, that gets really, really old really fast for me. I think it's actually one of my triggers that sets me off. Anyway, none of us are good at everything, but being humble is great. Praising other people for their talents is lovely, but when it's turned around and becomes an attention-seeking thing, that is a very passive behavior. Number 7 is avoiding conflicts at all costs. Fighting or arguing terrifies you if you are a passive person, and so you do everything you can do to not find yourself at odds with another person, even if that means doing things you don't want to do or not doing things. I don't like conflict either, which is partly why I'm just about finished my training as a conflict coach. That's a particular area of specialty in coaching is conflict coaching. And I took all sorts of training to be able to learn more about how to help other people navigate through both internal conflict, should I do this or should I do that, decision making, and workplace or interpersonal conflict situations. But conflict, I've learned, is not always a bad thing. Now, it depends on the degree to which the conflict is exhibiting itself. But disagreements about things can lead to very creative solutions and collaborative solutions, which can lead to things like personal and corporate growth. So, some idea, because people disagree, some idea that nobody's ever thought of before might be sparked, and you might have some amazing thing result from that. So conflict is not always a bad thing. If you are going to amazing lengths to avoid making somebody upset or mad because you're afraid, then you need to take another look at why, and you might want to consider that you are in an unhealthy situation in that case. If there's a lot of fear around that. And so that might be a sign right there. But if it's just because you don't like arguing, you don't like fighting, who really does? You might want to take a look at what happens to you in all of this. What are you losing by not standing up for yourself and saying what you think and how you feel? What's happening for you inside. Okay. Number 8 is putting everyone else's needs first. And, this sounds noble, but it's not. If you're not looking after yourself, again, like I was just saying at the end of the last one, who's going to? Being selfless or seemingly so is actually not the case, because eventually you're going to find yourself again festering with feelings of resentment and anger and frustration at other people. So the you who appears to be so nice is actually an angry and hurting person underneath. If you are putting everyone else's needs first and you are suffering inside, right? So all the niceness on the surface is actually false. Putting your own needs into balance with the needs of others means that you're respecting yourself too. And again, this is something that the passive person doesn't do, is the passive person does not respect themselves. If you don't respect yourself, who the heck else is going to respect you, right? And that was a hard lesson for me to learn too, is that seeming to be all sweet and nice and agreeing with things and avoiding conflict, it actually was making me an angry and bitter person inside. And I was really, really grateful to be able to be made aware of these things and to be able to start to come out of that. And every once in a while, I will default to passive behavior. It's a long, hard habit to break, but it's a very, very freeing thing and a huge relief to be able to be more assertive in most situations. So I encourage you to really take a look at this stuff. The next and last one that I have here today is the number 9. You use tentative language. And this was a term that was brought to my attention in a course that I was taking, actually, when we were on film doing an assessment where we had to be videotaped doing role play situations. And I was, the coach that was coaching me stopped the scene and said, "Why are you using tentative language?" And I thought for a minute, and then I thought, oh, it's like a light bulb coming on. Whoa, I am using tentative language. And then I started to pay attention to when I did such a thing. And I really caught myself over and over and over again. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about using words like maybe and just and perhaps and if you don't mind and possibly, using these words a lot. So for example, instead of asking somebody to do something that you want them to do, and I'll give you an example. Instead of saying, listen, Joan, would you be able to run the meeting on Tuesday because I've double booked myself? That would be a straightforward, simple, assertive question to somebody, right? I'm not begging them. I'm not pleading with them. I'm just stating that I've double booked myself. I'm not explaining why or with what. I'm just straightforward coming out and not beating around the bush and saying what I need. If I'm using tentative language, I'm going to say something like this. I'm sorry to bother you, Joan, but I've made a really stupid mistake. I seem to do that regularly. But anyways, if you aren't busy on Tuesday, but you might be, I know, because you're a really busy person. But, in case you aren't, I was wondering if you would mind possibly running the meeting because I should go to the other thing I booked. I promised that I would take my niece to this event that she's going to, and I really feel bad if I can't. But, if you can't, then that's okay. I understand. I'm really sorry to ask. Okay, so that is beating around the bush, and that is completely frustrating, and that is very, very tentative language. So instead of just saying, would you be willing to run the meeting on Tuesday because I've double booked myself, I've done this whole song and dance around the question, and I'm being very meek and passive and pussyfooting. So if you find yourself doing that, pay attention. How often do you use these words? And I began with an apology and ended with an apology there too, right? Which goes back to one of the other segments that I was talking about. Very tentative language, and sometimes we tend to do that. So pay attention to that and see, because it's not necessary. It's unnecessary language to do all of that. Rather than just be straightforward and assertive and ask for what you need. And we'll talk a lot more about being assertive in a couple of weeks. But for now, those are the 9 signs of passive behavior, or the 9 signs that I've identified at Communication Diva. We all have different styles. And again, depending on the situation, we may use any one of them. There are times for passive behavior. There are times for aggressive behavior and times for assertive behavior. But my question to you is, what is your default? Is this you or someone you know? And again, just recognizing this behavior can lead to making some change towards being more assertive. I think it's a useful exercise. And you can even write things down. You could even keep a little notebook for yourself or type it into your phone or whatever, of times when you have caught yourself and thought, I wonder why I'm behaving this way. So next week, we're going to talk about aggressive behavior and what that looks like. And in the meantime, if you have any feedback for me or any stories or anything you'd like to share, please come over to www.CommunicationDiva.com. You can leave a comment down underneath each episode where it says comments and there's a bracket with a number. You just click on that and you can log into Livefire with a Livefire account, or you can log in as a guest and leave a comment. And again, I respond to all comments and all emails and all of anything that anybody gives as feedback, I will respond to. You can also follow me on Twitter. It's Jenn Swanson, Jenn Swanson, and the number 2, is because there was already another Jenn Swanson out there, I guess. So you can also leave me a review in iTunes. I would absolutely love that under the Communication Diva Podcast. All feedback is appreciated. And again, I thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to listen to this. And I hope that you've gotten something valuable out of this episode. So until next time, this is Jenn Swanson. Blessings.